Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Jacob Silverblade and today we're doing a video on the balance update. I'm going to be quickly going through this to explain my thoughts and stuff. They talk about some things here about Mozrog and Orks and stuff and how they needed to buff the Orks but not Mozrog, and then the Dark Angels and whatnot, and the Genestealers, now they wanted to buff certain cards and nerf Ultramarines. I'm going to explain this in the script synopsis, but I don't think this is entirely accurate. At least they didn't quite achieve what they were trying to go for, in my personal opinion. I'm going to be talking about exactly breaking down all the cards and what the changes actually means in terms of a competitive sense. But overall, I think that nothing, like Mozrog hasn't really been hit, but really good things so, because otherwise they would have made him just a worse scored rank, which wouldn't be a good thing. Anyway, we're going to be talking about some of the changes. Orks here, we can talk about these things very quickly, but basically everything highlighted here is virtually irrelevant changes. The big shooter to free attack makes it more playable. It was like on the right card as at the top end as like a Gazgral aggro sort of deck where you go wide and aggro, and its mobility is decent for that, but it's not really that great. Tank Buster suffers from the Tank Buster problem and the fact that there's some factions that literally don't even have vehicles and not everybody plays them, wants to play them and stuff. Like, people can still put down big units and them not to be vehicles. So, and it doesn't even kill most vehicles in the game. So yeah, not really that great. Gunwagon is the worst card in the game, arguably one of the cards contending for it, increasing its range attack from 7 to 8 doesn't change that. And the Gorkanaut, 9 health to 10 health, doesn't really change what it's good at. I will go into the exact Gorkanaut and what it is, but I think I've got a copy. Yes, I do. If it lives, it gets to do 10 melee attack with blast 5. That's pretty decent. But that requires it living for an entire turn and then being able to attack. Realistically, that's not going to happen. So plus 1 extra HP most likely isn't a change that result. And then Stomper, stunning a random enemy. I mean, like, in all reality, that's probably, even though it's in principle sounds quite good, like, Jane Star, Suns and stuff, but for 10 energy that late in the game, I'd rather have it stun a random enemy troop. Like, yes, we can get builds where we got Lieutenant Titus, where he's got that assault doctrine sort of going, and then he can still be punching in your face. So it is better in that situation, but that's one warlord / one faction out of multiple different factions which are all trying to do their own thing. So most of the time, you'd rather just stun troop, to be frankly honest. And so yeah, Orks at the end of the day, it's not gonna do anything. There's still the better card for all situations, which is Jar Jar and Squig Off. Like, it could have been a pseudo Gargantuan Squig Off, because at the end of the day this stuns 3 random units effectively. Not random, but 3 units, where this could stun one random troop, which would have been nice. But it doesn't really change it. You're still better off with the Squig Off at the end of the day. But yeah, those are the changes there. Now we're going to get into these 4 changes in particular, because these 4 changes I actually think are decent for Orks, and you're going to be looking at more of a control Ork style, which would be quite interesting. First off, Painboy Snicklaw, or Snacklaw, whatever. 5 energy drop, and I think this actually makes him, the changes here make him legitimate enough to be scary and relevant. It's already got a 6 HP, so it's already a bit of a unit to remove. I'm not saying it's unremovable as a 5 energy unit, but play on curve, you have a 5 energy unit, it takes a little bit to remove this guy. His talent for 1 energy is actually half decent. Yes, 1 to 2 damage for 1 energy is not the best, particularly when you're trying to use it to heal yourself, but 1 to 5 healing. On average, it's 1.5 damage. On healing wise, it's 2.5 damage. So on average, you're healing about 1 HP. If you use this on yourself, you can also use it just to finish off a 1 HP unit for 1 energy. if you need to use it for that purpose. But actually increasing its stats from 6, 6, and then particularly the 2 to 3 means that the Warlord can't just be shooting at this guy and removing like the final 2 health off of it, can't just be pinging it here and there, with its Warlord, just to be able to kill this guy. They actually got to deal with it, and if they don't deal with it, you actually have that 6 melee attack, so it's actual proper threat. It can actually trade with other units now and still do its thing. So I would say this guy is actually a legitimate, like, sort of in a control more style of deck. I think this guy actually has a legitimate place now, and could see play. Particularly if you put armor on your Warlord, that 1 to 2 damage on your Warlord suddenly goes to only 1, which means that the healing just becomes even more relevant. So yeah. Commando. This is a card which has actually always been a decent card, just underplayed, and it's actually quite scary. Commando, the reason why Commando is so bloody good is even though the stats are pretty bad for a 7 energy drop, at the end of the day it's got stealth, and stealth is one of the best keywords in the game. The strike ability to also regain stealth is a bloody bit of good effect, so just doubling down on stealth made this guy actually just a legitimate scary problem that they just couldn't easily deal with. He was going to take out a troop and deal damage to face, or deal damage to face and take out a troop regardless, unless they actually had proper anti-stealth sort of for that position in the game, right? Now with that increased attack means that you can trade with bigger things, and particularly the increased health I think is the biggest part here, because in theory if they don't do anything about this guy can do 21 damage as it is to the opponent's face, and the opponent just have to take that if they don't have an answer for him. This guy with that increased health though means that he's gone from 21 damage to, what is it, 32 damage? Yeah, 32 damage to face. That almost kills virtually any Warlord in the game. And this guy's a legitimate problem with that strike ability. They've got to have proper anti-stealth. If they don't, he's just going to keep on going back into stealth, and he might actually be the first, because he's so high in cost, constantly has stealth effectively, he might be the first thing in the game which actually forces opponents to put down anti-stealth cards. With this buff as well, that's quite interesting. So I legitimately go along and look at Commando and go, scary unit, consider actually running anti-stealth now. Now we've got Veteran Stormboy. This guy is from 6 to 7 life, is like, he was already the best flanker for Orks at this point in time. Now at 7 life, even more so. He's been able to trade into something, most likely live now because of that 7 life, and then just the opponent has to deal with him. They have to get distracted by this guy because it's still 6 melee attack. You can still trade into something else again. They don't really want to have to deal with a double trade with a Veteran Stormboy. This guy is going to be bloody good, particularly I would predict a more control based deck, and could cause some problems. And then Scragging and Stash. Basically, this has been changed to something like Informant Network, which I think it was a card in HHL. It's a very similar card. It's done those things, and Informant Network was a decent anti-stealth tool in the past. And so Orcs getting basically Informant Network instead of how this card is right now, which is Scragging and Stash. It doesn't really work. You give something Vanguard, nothing do stealth, but then the thing with Vanguard probably gets in the way of the thing which lost stealth, so you can't even steal the stealth thing anyway. Just deal 1 damage across the board, helps with dealing the actual stealth unit stealth, and then just able to use anti-stealth. It has a multi-flexible purpose tool. I really quite like that card in principle. Now it's 3 energy too much, arguably so. I think Striking and Stash could actually be just a 2 energy card and not 3 energy card, but I get why they did it, because in HHL they had the card Informant Network was a 3 energy card and was a decent anti-stealth card for quite a long time, but I would argue that it probably does need to be a 2 energy card now at this point in time. So yeah, those are the 4 energy cards which I think really helps with control, and you should actually, I would say as Orc players, should actually consider playing control Orcs now, particularly with Gaz, because he's got a 40 HP. I would consider going for that. And I'm finally going to talk about this section, which is supposedly nerfs for Mozrog. But at the end of the day, nothing I'm not saying there wasn't nerfs, but really these are all nerfs to just generic orc cards in general, and making some cards unplayable. There isn't really a nerf to Mozrog here. We talk about Grotton's Bomb Squig, low attack from 2 to 1. Where's the boy? Grotton the Bomb Squig. I see virtually no change here. His whole thing is that he Blacklash puts down the Bomb Squig anyway, so he's gonna die. So majority of cases he's gonna die. He still has the 1 melee attack if you want to somehow melee attack with him for whatever reason. Maybe to trigger mob effects, right? Instead of range attack. So he's going along to do that, but majority of the time, you're going to use the range attack. And the reason why you're going to use the range attack, because it does more damage. So really, its entire purpose, what it's trying to achieve, blah blah blah, out of the slight occasion where you done a trigger a mob effect, right? That there's basically no nerf here. I don't really see a situation where this is actually a nerf to this guy, because you instead of choosing between mob or range, you're just gonna do only range, and things fly in this game, so you now have to do range things against that anyway. So it's like, what's really the nerf here? It is the most minor of nerfs in the game because of that flank effect, and the backlash still does the thing. It still puts in a bomb swig. Like, it's still, anyway. Whatever, right? Does this nerf Mozrog? No. I know Mozrog always used Grot on a Bomb Swig, but many other warlords use Grot on a Bomb Swigs. And it was just that Mozrog kind of was the best warlord at going at aggro at the end of the day, so hey ho. Now, Rock Truck Squig Buggy. Change flank for 1 armor. That is his entire thing. 1 armor, don't get me wrong, 1 armor is a good ability. It is a good effect. Things with 1 armor do typically have like less life, for example, on average than other cards, because 1 armor is a decent effect. But flank is a much better effect. And I'm sorry, but this entire identity of this card with the Strike Deployer Bomb Squig has now been completely changed and is nowhere near the same card. It was kind of a bad card before. I agreed with the range decrease, but not the health, I think, decrease before last time. And now it doesn't even have flank. I think we're looking at a borderline unplayable card. If it wasn't for the 1 armor at all, this would be unplayable. Now that it's got, I mean, like, what is its purpose as well? I mean, like it's a fast vehicle. If anything deserves flank as like just a fast vehicle, it's the fast vehicle. And now it's like a tank. Like, what is this card? Anyway, I've got to say my personal opinion on this, and it's just not a good change. It's now just the veteran Stormboy already outdid it. The veteran Stormboy just got a buff to outdo it, and now it's stomping on the card. Rock Truck Squig Buggy even more so now. It's kind of insulting, to be honest. This is a very problematic, not problematic. I get why things has been changed, and I think it was appropriate considering it puts in the Bomb Squig for that strike ability, right? Something did need to change about it. Probably like, now thinking about it, probably like having the 6 range attack, right, with the flank, but it'd still keep the 5 HP. And I think that would be an appropriate sort of middle ground. So it still could be used as a removal piece to rid it with something big, but it wasn't. Doesn't have the HP to support guaranteeing a strong strike with the Bomb Squig, right? Something like that. But as the change now is with the armor 1, yeah, this card is now unplayable, and it's a real shame. And then we're going to go on to Mozrog. Basically, his stomp, or his passive ability stomp, is removed, and it's been added to the talent, so that it has to, if it survives, give +1 melee and stomp to your warlord next turn. Overall, like, I don't think Mozrog was that crazily better than Gordrank. I think they're actually very similar, because he's got that +1 melee, does 1 range attack +1 melee, where Gordrank gets +2 melee. Mozrog was slightly more flexible at the end of the day, but I think Gordran could go for a better melee finish with proper kitty, with at least more reliable melee finish, in my personal opinion. Overall, though, I think what we're looking at is kind of it just puts it in line with where Mozrog was slightly better than Gordrang, like just had that slight edge. I now think they're pretty much the same, and I think that's a good thing overall, because I don't think another nerf to Mozrog was needed. I think he's a perfectly fine warlord, and there's nothing particularly broken about him. Yeah, that's just my final thoughts on this guy. I don't think there's anything particularly broken about this guy. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it there. Overall, I think these are good changes to Orks, not the Rocket Truck Swig Buggy. I just have to disagree on that. I think that's just completely ruined its identity, even if they buffed the stats on the Ork card now to have like more health and more armor. It's now a completely different card. It's like a tank now, which is, I don't think, what it's meant to be. It's meant to be a fast vehicle, whatever, right? Overall, I think these are good changes for the Orks. I think it encourages more of a control style, and I actually quite like it. But it's a bit of a shame about the Rocket Truck Swig Buggy, you won't lie. Dark Angels. Bit of a weird change to Dark Angels here. And I'll go on, because they tried to talk about, like, at least threatening troops harder to contest. And they hardly did that at all. There is one card which did get the case where it does actually apply to. It's the Interrogator Chaplain. They did move its increased range attack from 2 to 3. It's now got 3 range attack. Overall, I think that's, is a good thing. It puts it at stats on average. His ability is actually half decent, but most of the time you're just able to rage attack into it and just kill it for free, sort of thing. Now you can't just quite do that with that 3 range attack. And if he does lives, he's got that 4 melee attack, right? Overall, you're going to be using this Inner Circle Champion more. Like, don't mistake for it. As soon as you get the Inner Circle Champions, put in the Inner Circle Champions, but at least you're not going to be too insulted as a new player trying to run an Interrogator Chaplain in your list. Don't feel too bad. It can be a replacement for, I guess, Inner Circle Champion now. With that out of the way, everything else isn't related to doing that whatsoever. We got Wages of Retribution, lower the cost from 4 to 3. Yeah, Wages of Retribution was already used beforehand because it stays on your warlord for the entire game, and that constant sort of quest progression is like crazy good. Now making this a 3 NG cost card, I think is just doing wonders for it, really. It's just a really good card in my opinion. And I think this card is just... I don't see why it needed to become 3 cost, but I think it's a really dangerous card. I think it goes in pretty much every single warlord deck, maybe except Belial because he's trying to go for aggro, right? Isn't it going Asmodee? Yeah, it's not going Asmodee, no question about it. I think it goes into Azrael now because it's just too efficient of a card. You're going to start, if you get it early enough with Azrael, you're going to start generating secrets for the rest of the game, and then you're going to start putting them at the top of your deck so you can draw them straight away, and then you can use them straight away, sort of thing. With Asmodee, it creates so many secrets. Why not use the best card in the game at generating secrets at the end of the day? So yeah, raises your retribution. The Ezekiel talent change has now just made his talent like situationally useful into use it every single bloody turn, please, all the time. It is a really scary talent ability, and I think, you know, the best in between was that 2 energy, but now as a 1 energy card, flipping neck, this is a problem. And now this Ezekiel guy, which kind of became a pretty problematic thing to try and remove on site, sort of thing, because of that camouflage, because of that shield. It was very difficult to remove this guy on site, and you still had to take 4 range attack for your warlord if you wanted to remove him on site. He's gone from that to now we have to remove him on site because that is just too efficient out of a rally ability, and some factions might not even be able to do that because of that camouflage effect. So yeah, this guy is very, very dangerous, and don't forget about him. And now Covert Operation, I'm really quite excited actually about this. I actually quite like this change. Covert Operation was always a card which felt very unique, felt very cool as a mechanic. Return a friendly troop to a random enemy troop to the top of their deck. It was like a way of removing the opponent's threat without removing it. And you were still able to get things off. Like, you're able to get that synergizer with teleport, makes it that more consistent, right? You're able to get the But it's really good with Azrael, because Azrael can make these 1 energy drops, and that means that you would have a 1 energy drop, you play straight away covert operation onto that, send it back to the deck. The problem is it was just that too expensive. Now it becomes far more plausible with Azrael getting these Deathwing Terminators off. With their extra armor, makes them very hard to remove. You can then get them to really go down on life, gain maximum value out of them, then returning into the deck and then triggering the teleport effect off again. And if in doubt, you can just have that 1 energy thing as a backup option with Azrael to then be played later on a covert operation turn when you just need it. I think this is a really good and quite scary card, and can be really actually quite powerful on the right turns with like a Deathwing Nightmaster or whatever. I think that's quite scary, and that certainly does need to be testing with. I certainly will test it myself, see if it becomes worthwhile as a 3 energy card. I can only suspect it is. Overall, I actually quite like the changes to the Dark Angels. I just don't really see that many units becoming worthwhile thing, because Ezekiel you were used all the time anyway, so it's not making the troops more threatening. It's meh. Then we have a whole bunch of, going on to GSC now, with a whole bunch of GSC changes. I'm going to make 2 changes mostly. Major changes, I would say, with the Subterranean Ambush and then Metamorph Icon Bearer. I think these 2 belong in their own category, because these actually change current decks in GSC, in my personal opinion, and making them from unplayable to very much playable cards, because they were kind of used beforehand anyway. With all the other cards, I don't think they really make it, unfortunately. Like the Neophyte High Heavy, yes, I think it does justify its stats a lot more, and actually makes it half decently statted. Let's go to the cards itself. A Neophyte Heavy, for example, let's say that the average is 3-3 with 4 life. I think you see that quite across the board. It's like 3-3 with 4 life is average of stats. Well, this is like 1-5, so, you know, minus the 5 by 2, add the 2 onto the 3, you now have a 3-3, right? Doesn't have the 4 health. Now it's getting changed to 4 health, it now has average stats. You're going to see this with Acolyte Heavy, basically becomes average stats. The Acolyte Specialist basically becomes average stats. One of the things is Hulking Aberrant actually becomes quite a scary unit with that ability to ambush stun the opponent, and also as a permanent 1 armor. As a 6 energy drop, 7 health with 1 armor. That's quite a tanky boy, I'm not gonna lie. But overall, I'm not seeing particularly many changes to this. Better sabotage stuff, better cool things, right? But not particularly any particular combos with this. First thing though, we need to be talking about combo wise, which is the main most powerful warlords, I'd say. He's got Subterranean Assault, lower cost from 5 to 4. Subterranean Assault is this: you choose a friendly troop, die this battle, and then deploy it. You just get it for free. The main thing with Subterranean Assault in the past was actually a Primus Safriano deck, no surprise there. But what you did is you got Biophagus, which would surprisingly enough generate enhanced Monocultures. You'd have these in your deck. You would go for something like Locust as well, and then you would go for Nexus. And what you'd do is you would get the artificial ability of Nexus, trigger that multiple times with a whole bunch of 1 energy low cost things here and there, stratagems, right? You increase the attack of this guy and another guy to absurd levels. You have a guy maybe in another stealth troop, maybe Primus Safriana herself. Absurd levels, you attack straight away, deal heavy damage to face, and then you just got this combo aggro sort of build. The only problem with it is that if you get managed, for example, Lieutenant Titus came in the game and then it had some very good blast stuff, and the blast stuff was able to remove those stealth troops and able to get around that. There's a couple things like that. So hence, the Subterranean Assault was a very good way of getting the Nexus back, because you kind of needed that Nexus. It was one of the most important things. Getting that Nexus back, because you went for a low troop deck, to then punish the opponent even further, right? It's a very good combination for that purpose. Making it a 4 energy cost makes that sort of thing way more plausible and way more interesting, and I think could bring that build back. It could also be used in other aspects. Maybe it could bring these like the Ketamorph back or something, like triggering that Uprising again, maybe Cult Leman Russ, just bring that for value. now that it's a 4 energy card, could justify these different sort of builds and these different things. And I think that would be pretty cool overall. Quite an interesting card there. Now we got Metamorph Icon Bearer. I think he had this ability in the past where you had rally, choose 2 troops and create 2 copies in your hand to lower the cost by 1. I think that used to be a thing in the past, and he was a very problematic card in the past because you just end up creating so much stuff for value as a 5 energy card. Whereas Icon Bearer, and I think he's going to be the same thing again. Why he's going to make it into a deck is actually one of the most powerful GSC decks as it stands right now. That is the Metamorph Leader, where you have the 1 cost on the crucial turn. You use a whole bunch of the Neophyte Icon Bearers to make Neophyte Initiates, and after Neophyte Initiates filling their hand up, you go Metamorph Leader, Neophyte Initiates, and then you just ping the entire face damage and get massively, crazily statted units with the Metamorph's Uprising ability. Very, very scary combo sort of stuff. Now, the reason why this didn't make the cut before is because you got 2 cost troops instead of 1 cost troops, but now they decrease the cost by them by 1. Now there becomes 1 cost troops. Combine that with the Metamorph Leader, it becomes 0 cost troops, and that's what you need to be able to trigger a whole bunch of Uprising. So these can now be used to trigger increasing amount of Uprising effects along with your Neophyte Initiates that you're going to generate with Neophyte Icon Bearer. And since, because it's a 5 energy card just before you do get the Metamorph, I think this card is going to make it now into those sort of decks, and that could make actually GSC quite considerably much more powerful. I would seriously do not underestimate the power of GSC right now. They could be meta. That GSC deck in particular could be meta, because I'm not seeing a particular counter for it. In particular, you know, they can get 2 Neophyte Specialists. This is the main thing that we're going for. It's to create 2 Sabotage in the enemy hand. I presume you only generate infantry, because Genestealer troops, no, troop. It could be generating not Neophyte Hybrid. We wouldn't want to do that. It could get Neophyte Trooper to be able to deal with those big threats, right? With that Uprising sort of effects. But you could get the Jackals, where you get the Sabotages, and that could just be increasing the amount of ping damage as well. So that there's options here, but Neophyte Specialist is the particular one they're going for. Yeah, that's the particular one going for, and adding those Sabotages in your hand just gives you less options, and that gives you another problem to deal with as the opponent as it goes later on as well. So yeah, I think that is going to be a particular problematic card, particularly in that deck where you're able to combo off so well. So yes, GSC, watch out for them, because particularly Metamorph Leader. Now we got Ultramarines, Master the Fleet. Your Ventress's talent, increase costs from 1 to 2. I think this is very quite generous. I know many people were talking about how were just going to get nuked to the ground again. And I appreciate that they didn't just nuke us to the ground again and make us another 6 months of unplayability. You can still go for aggro Ultramarines. You really can. Your best warlord for this is probably a Calgar, in fact, for aggro Ultramarines. Titus is different. Titus is more of a Gym Boss sort of style where you have that constant chain, the sustain, you got the removal for the troops, but then you turn Titus into a powerhouse and then you punch him in the face. So it's more like a mid-range build, that sort of build, because you got that powerhouse sort of Titus build where you're using the Assault Doctrines. And talking about Assault Doctrines, that is certainly one of the cards which could have received nerfs. We'll talk about in a moment what nerfs what I reckon that the Ultramarines should have had, but yeah, you Real Venturous, 1 cost to 2 cost, probably makes them as bad as Lavarius, to be honest. They're not bad warlords, by the way, because they're held up by the Ultramarines faction, and how Ultramarines are a very good place right now. So you're not gonna have bad win rates with them, but your best deck for aggro, I can only presume, is Calgar now, because of that consistent card draw. That ability to get the right cards you need, able to point blank shot them or death from above them, I can only say has to be the best option at this point in time. But now, things which I predict should have been changed for Ultramarines, to be frankly honest. some of the things is that if I had to name 3k things, it would be Uriel Ventress himself, because of that 1 energy talent ability combined so well with codex and fixing codex turns with like Stern Guard, Sergeant, whatever. It was such a key important point for that. It was very, very good for that purpose. You know, very, very good for that purpose, right? But that's one of the main things I would have changed for that. It's changing it from a 1 energy to a 2 energy ability was needed, but I would have made Uriel Ventress, you know, I would have given his start of the game, have an extra card in his hand, that ability back. I think that would have been perfectly fine, because it was a problem back, you know, a year ago, roughly now. Maybe a year and a bit ago, actually, now thinking about it. It was a problem back then, when the power, you know, the game has been power crept at the end of the day, since a year ago. The game is different now. It was a problem back then, but even then, they were talking about it towards the end of the season, where Gaz could actually do something about it with his new armor cards. So it started to become not a problem anymore. And then they removed the extra card advantage for Uriel Ventress himself. I think going back to that would be just completely fine, where he has that card advantage, because it gives him that unique advantage over other warders like Manis Kalka, where he has to actually spend energy to draw cards, but Manis Kalka has the health advantage over Uriel Ventress, you see. So hence, I think that's what I would have liked to see a change there, for example. But that is one of the changes I would have made with the 3 changes. Another change I would have made would be the Assault Doctrine. I think it still does too much. We beforehand, as Ultramarines, we relied on this card as being the only thing holding us in the game. Then they buffed Ultramarines, and this card still proved to be one of the best cards the Ultramarines still had, which only kind of proved how powerful this card actually was. And it's still a staple in that, so I would have changed this to only give +3 melee attack at the end of the day. I think that would have been an appropriate change for Ultramarines and made it not too oppressive, and, you know, making it in line. And now we're going to be talking about what to play as Ultramarines. Right now, Vira Tigurius is probably the way to go with his Codex build, with the Avenging Zeal play, and one of the problematic things for that build is Sergeant Talion. With that, just refill 1 energy to able to re-trigger Codex again just enables way too many combos early in the game to just get devastating plays, devastating boards, and able to use that just to kill your opponent very, very quickly. Sergeant Talion is such an enabler for that, and I think this is the 3rd card which could have definitely received some kind of nerf, just to make it so that Vira Tigurius is not too oppressive. Anyway, we got off lightly there as Ultramarines, no doubt about it. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.